Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt. Happy to be with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Plenty of great show coming your way here where sports truly meets life. And, of course, you're watching on Facebook Live on facebook.com/livenowdt. For the first time ever, on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, I am proud to present to you Marcus Coleman. Marcus Coleman played in Syracuse football history, was a defensive tackle for the Orange, and I'm very happy to have him here this morning inside of Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory's What's Poppin', giving you the list of topics for the day. Marcus is going to talk with us on so many different things, but before we do any of that, we got to bring him in. So let's do that. Marcus, how are we doing today?
Dan, good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. And Marcus, first and foremost, just what's been going on? I mean, I know these last few months have been trying. They've been, a little bit crazy in some way, shape, or form for all of us. Even the most sane of us have probably had our moments. So what can you tell me about how the last few months have been going for you?
Oh, definitely. 2020 has been the black swan event for everyone. You cannot predict it. You cannot predict that we're going to have a pandemic that completely stopped the economy. For me personally, I just took a new job in Western Mass. I joined a wealth management firm, supporting them with operations and administrative tasks. 2 weeks later, after I moved and started a new job, the stay-at-home orders in Massachusetts were in place. So I had to completely learn a new job while working remote at the same time.
And so like you said, working, having to learn a new job and work remote, just got that job. I mean, obviously, congratulations that you were able to get something before all this happened, because I know, some people kind of got opportunities and just kind of jumped right in, thank goodness, before all of this came to be. But, what's life been like from that perspective, to start a new job, and then right after you start a new job, you're not in an office, you're at home, you're trying to figure things out? I mean, what has that experience been like? Because, I think that, you speaking on your experience probably speaks to a lot of people that are watching and listening right now.
Yeah, I can compare it to transitioning from high school football to college football your freshman year. You have to get used to the conditioning, bigger playbook, and I never worked remote before. And also, just joining a team, I still had to learn my colleagues' personalities, so it was just like 2 a days. Learning the task I needed to complete, and then learning the technology to work remote efficiently. But like you mentioned, I was truly blessed to get this opportunity. I know a lot of people, I know personally, friends and family, lost their jobs due to COVID, so I'm always grateful that I have a job and is considered an essential business.
Yeah, and like you said, to go through this and just be happy that you have a job and that it's considered essential and that you can do, you could continue this job and whatnot. Like you said, the adversity, you could liken it to, transitioning in the world of football. What did that transition teach you that maybe helped you through this transition? What did you learn about that adversity that essentially maybe you could pull back to and say, okay, from high school to college, I learned all of this. So, in this coronavirus time, I can take this. Did you have any teaching tools that you could take from that time to help you out?
Oh, yes. So when you make that transition from high school football to college football, we all in our head think we're the best player ever because we're probably a big fish in a small pond from our high school days. But when you get to college, you're going against national talent, especially being in a Power 5 conference. And you can't shy away from uncomfortable situations. So my experience, my freshman year, had to embrace being uncomfortable. So if I was struggling with conditioning, that means going to do more conditioning. If I was struggling with the playbook, that means going to do more studying. So that those type of habits I learned early, and I was able to translate it over to this new role. I was struggling with technology, I practiced it more. Getting to know my clients, I schedule more calls with them. Learning my colleagues, setting up Zoom calls to get to know their personalities.
And for you, I mean, Zoom and everything that's out there. Speaking here of Marcus Coleman, Syracuse Football defensive tackle alum here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora this morning. Companies like Zoom, if not for coronavirus, TikTok and Zoom, I don't know where the heck they would be. So, I mean, what can you say about learning how to be on Zoom, which I like to call the Brady Bunch? Because the way that it sets everything up, you can kind of just see everybody and be on that screen together. So, how have you dealt with, like you said, learning new technology and figuring things out and whatnot? What have you learned about the technology? And I guess the more important question for the for some people listening in is, are you on TikTok?
Okay, so I'll answer the last question first. So I'm not on TikTok.
Okay.
The only social media I have is Instagram. But maybe one day you'll see me on TikTok doing some dances. Right. And I don't have the best moves.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then talking about Zoom, so I spent majority of my career in sales. At my last role in Philadelphia, we did virtual presentations with financial advisors. But when we transitioned to Zoom recently, I had to get used to seeing myself when speaking every day. That's something you don't get in face-to-face interaction. So there's a lot of memes out there that talk about just seeing yourself on Zoom and you don't look at anyone else. You're just focusing on the faces that you're making.
Yeah.
And in the industry that I'm in wealth management, a lot of our clients are older. They're over 65. So just thinking about that, when they grew up, they didn't have cell phones. So getting them to operate Zoom has been a major challenge. However, a lot of them love it now. After getting to that first setup, they don't have to leave their home. They can see us and speak to their advisors. And it's been a great advantage, and it looks like something that we're going to keep even after COVID.
Yeah, and that's some of the things is, like we kind of have, we've leaned on technology so much that's, the mentality is, okay, so how can we use it to our advantage moving forward? What can we do, with the technology moving forward and whatnot as we continue to find our place in this, I don't want to call it a new world. I'm going to call it a change. I'm going to call it adversity. I'm going to call it maybe a transition. Whatever you want to call it. I look at the positive side of things. And speaking here with Marcus Coleman, Syracuse Football defensive tackle alum this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Marcus, how have you tried to see this in a positive way? What can you tell me about, trying to find positivity in a world where people, were negative going into coronavirus, and, I'm sure a lot of people found stuff to complain about during coronavirus. So how are you staying positive? What are you doing to keep yourself on the positive side of the track?
And Dan, that is a great question. And I've learned so many things about life through football. So I'll use the analogy. In a football game, you have 4 quarters. There's a lot of games, even at Syracuse and high school, you might be losing the first quarter. You're losing the second quarter. You're losing the third quarter. But you can't have a negative mindset and think, well, I'm not going to win this game, because you won't see opportunities as they present themselves. So during COVID, I had to stay positive. Like I mentioned earlier, I was blessed to have a job. That's one way to stay positive. I was blessed that no one in my family got COVID, knock on wood. I was blessed to see telemedicine. My mother, she has multiple sclerosis, so she's one of those people that are at risk with a weakened immune system. Due to telemedicine, she was still able to get all her medicines, get checkups with her doctors, and this got her through a trying time. So there's so many positives, even though we're facing so much adversity globally.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you said, just trying to look at it. And through 4 quarters, things go up and down, things change, but you have to stick with it. You have to stick to the plan. You have to, believe that you can win, because life goes through that. Life goes through phases. Life goes through quarters. We hear everything about phases nowadays, and that's just, it's what happens. I mean, it's what is in front of us. And the thing is, I think, Marcus, one of the things that people really struggle with is controlling the controllables and then leaving the other things to God, or to whatever people believe in. I believe in God. I have a faith. I know some people out there have other thoughts and whatnot, but there's only so much you can control. And the reality that I've learned in trying to work on my body, my mind, and myself in these last few months is that outside of you have no control. Outside of your thoughts, outside of your actions, outside of your words, you legitimately have no control of anything else. And we spend the majority of our lives worrying about what we can't control instead of just focusing on ourselves and knowing that, we can control ourselves. And that's really the only thing to put your energy into, is knowing, okay, well, if I can control this, then let me do my best with this instead of worrying about something that I can't. What can you say to that? The fact that we've seen in these last few months how little control we have over the world. And to me, it should have taught us to control ourselves and to stop stressing about what's out of our control. But I mean, how do you take that? Because I feel like on an everyday basis, a lot of people struggle with letting go of the fact that they can't control the world, they can't control the virus, and you really can't control anything but you.
And Dan, that is a great point. And that's the struggle that even I have to this day. I work on discipline through so many facets, whether it's through my diet, trying not to eat ice cream every night for dinner, or workout. And I'll give you another example from football. So Scott Schaefer, that was one of his biggest quotes to us: control the controllable.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, all you can do is prepare. Did you work out hard? Did you study the playbook? Did you know your competitor? Did you watch film? And for me, as you already know, Dan, my junior year, I got medically disqualified. So I was thinking, I worked hard for 3 years. My senior year is coming up. I'm going to get an opportunity to contend for the starting defensive tackle spot. Next thing you know, in the spring, I'm getting medically disqualified. It was hurtful, but I couldn't control that. All I could control was, okay, what's next? How do I utilize these degrees from Syracuse to create a life I wanted to create through football?
And for you, when you went through that being medically disqualified, I'm sure that there are those moments where you want to control it. There's those moments where you wanted to take over and say, you know what, God, hand this to me. Syracuse, hand this to me. I'll figure this out. How did you navigate it? And, like you said, I mean, you knew that it wasn't in your control. You knew you had to kind of relinquish that because you never had it, and you had to just move forward, so to speak. But how hard was it initially for you to let go?
Oh, it was unbelievably hard. And that's why I have empathy for people right now during COVID that are facing so much adversity, maybe losing their job, might have lost a loved one. Getting medically disqualified doesn't compare to that. However, I'm human. I worked so hard to get to that position in life. Been playing football for 10 plus years. It was a part of my identity. And just by two sentences by a doctor, all that was wiped away. So I went through a tough time. And once again, I was blessed with an opportunity that I didn't expect. I ran into a lady, a Syracuse alum, Linda Dooley. She had the Dooley leadership experience, which focused at the time on college seniors that are transitioning into the workforce.
Yeah.
And I applied to the program. I was accepted, one of 16 out of 180 plus candidates. And from that moment, I was able to transition and establish another identity that wasn't associated with football.
Speaking here with Marcus Coleman, Syracuse defensive tackle alum, and like you said, finding an identity that wasn't connected to football, even though being medically disqualified is probably one of the toughest things you ever had to encounter. Looking back on it and using the very ironic statement because of this year that hindsight is 2020, what did that moment do for you? And being a moment of adversity, being a moment of frustration, do you almost in a way appreciate the adversity that was brought by being medically disqualified because maybe it helped prepare you a little bit sooner, or maybe it helped you make decisions you wouldn't have made if you were still playing football?
And then, I mean, that's a great question as well. And I would say personally, it gave me an advantage. Something that might not be widely known. A lot of college athletes, especially that go to Power 5 conferences, Syracuse, Duke, and you play football or basketball, everyone there thinks they're going to be the next NBA or NFL star. But statistics show us that only 1% is actually going to make it to the professionals. And then the NFL, the acronym, you make the joke, it means not for long.
Yeah.
The average career is 3 years. But a lot of us, being a young kid, you put all your eggs into having your sports career work out, and you might not have the professional background that you need, whether it's how to write a resume, how do you interview, what do I want to do, what careers are out there. There's more careers than just being a teacher, a police officer. I mean, you can be a council worker. You can get into wealth management like I did. And once again, going back to the dually leadership experience, without being medically disqualified, making me eligible for that program, I don't know where I'll be at the moment.
And for you, I mean, obviously that puts you in a better place that maybe you didn't know at the time, probably didn't know at the time, but you know now is where you were supposed to be. We got a message that came in from Linda, and it said Marcus has catapulted to being a dually leadership experience advisory board member and moderator of our weekly learning and networking program. So Linda Dooley is actually listening and watching this morning, and she wanted to show some love and mention the fact that you're part of the Leadership Experience Advisory Board as a board member and a moderator of the weekly learning and networking programs. First and foremost, Marcus, what can you say about Linda supporting and watching and listening to you today? And then what's it like for you to go through that dually leadership that helps you get to where you are, and now you're a part of the advisory board?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome to have her on. She's one of my biggest supporters. When I told her that I was having an interview by you today, I'm a really humble guy, so I didn't want to really share it. And Linda was like, "Oh my God, this is so awesome. This is a great opportunity," and that gave me confidence that I did have, but it did boost it. Speaking to the duty leadership experience in the advisory board, it's helped me tremendously. In wealth management, I ultimately want to be a financial advisor to professional athletes and entertainers. And being on the advisory board for the duty leadership experience is an opportunity for me to hone in on my business owner skills. During COVID, like many other companies, they had to innovate during a crisis. So our company was focused mainly on mentoring and coaching and professional development in person.
Yeah.
We took all our product lines, 10 which we had, completely virtual in 2 weeks, which was just one of the hardest times for us. The amount of prep, the amount of work we had to do, and now we're looking 4 months later. We have the biggest reach ever since the company was established back in 2008. We had a ton of people on. We had Darrell Smith, who you might know, a big Syracuse football player that made it to the NFL. We had him on recently from one of our business lines, and we've been taking off. So it's been a great experience so far.
You know, and it's such a beautiful thing, and to see things come full circle, you know, which I think is pretty amazing, and I always appreciate that in my life, you know, as things just, you know, tend to wrap around, and that's what happens. You know, you keep talking about, you know, the dually leadership experience that you had, and now being a part of that and being able to help other people have that experience. You know, there's other people that are coming up, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do in their life, and you get to be, you know, one of those people that gets to help them get there, and you can help them get there through an avenue with this dually leadership experience that you had. I mean, how funny is that to you? And do you take the time to take a step back and really just kind of, you know, see how crazy life works and how your situation gave you that opportunity to get into the Dooley leadership experience, and now from there, you have now had the opportunity to help somebody else. I mean, anybody that's listening and watching right now, they can talk about probably at least maybe one moment in their life where something helped them, and now all the way back around they're helping somebody else through that, or maybe through something similarly, or maybe a teacher became a colleague and a friend, like I feel like happened in your case. Just what you could say to that.
Yeah, I don't know what people's religious background is on listening, but I always say I'm truly blessed. I believe in God, and like you mentioned, some opportunities you just don't know. And when they do happen, like the Dewey leadership experience, it really changes your life. I always believed that I was going to make a big impact through football, potentially playing in the NFL, make a ton of money, set some type of foundation. But I'm making a larger impact now than I believe I could have made in the NFL. And the reason why I say this, over the past 4 years, I helped numerous of old teammates write resumes, prepare for interviews, help them out, decide what industry they want to work in, help them out emotionally. Maybe they made it to the NFL and they have a major injury. Now they're a free agent. Being medically disqualified back in my junior year, I was able to walk them through those steps, have empathy, understand how they feel, and all I can say is I'm blessed and I'm enjoying the opportunity to continue to make an impact on athletes that have similar backgrounds to mine.
That comment here from Marcus Coleman this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and being medically disqualified. I mean, that is the true, it's out of your control, Marcus. And with you being there at Syracuse, and I mean, I remember you being out there, and I remember your number, remember your jersey and whatnot, and you see these guys like yourself that are there 1 second, and then it's like, well, what happened? And this medical disqualification, like you said, a couple seconds changes your life. To play football as long as you had, and to be connected with it as long as you have been, when it was all in your control, in the sense of how hard you work, how hard you lift, how much you learn about the playbook, what you decide to do and whatnot. That was all on you growing up, and then 2 sentences changed all of that. Kind of to wrap up everything we've been discussing, what would be your advice to kids that are going through that right now? Because Syracuse, unfortunately, and for whatever reason, has over these last few years, we've seen a lot of people get medically disqualified, and it's not always with concussions. Sometimes it's with other things. Sometimes it's with a foot injury and whatnot. What would be your advice to young men and women out there that put everything into the sports world, and then they sit down and they get to hear what you heard, which is, I'm sorry, fill in the name, you're medically disqualified? What would be your advice to them?
My advice is you're more than just an athlete. Never let your identity be made up of just one thing. I see so many of my friends that are so talented, whether it's with math, reading, dealing with people, emotional intelligence. They could be psychologists. And a lot of times, and I was there as a kid, you only see one thing. You only see it. It's the end goal. And even if you're not medically disqualified, maybe after your senior year, your coach said, hey, you're probably not a professional player. That's the end of a chapter, and it's the start of the next one. And to wrap it all up, I say how you truly define yourself is your last chapter in your life. So if you can continuously transform yourself, learn, and make an impact, a positive impact in society, that's a true success in my mind, and that's how you should feel as well.
Yeah, coming here this morning from Marcus Coleman. Marcus, for you, as you talk about making an impact on society and whatnot, we going through coronavirus and everything else going on, Social justice has been an issue for a very, very long time. Social justice, in all honesty, has been an issue since the beginning of, Christopher Columbus getting here and, bringing that boat to shore and Native Americans. And then from there, we look at slavery and everything that's gone on. Women have not always been treated in the best. So there's so many things that have happened in society. I mean, I've learned about my culture. I've learned about how Italians were sought after by the KKK just like other groups are. Things that I would have never known if not, having a school and having the opportunity to learn. So the world, when it comes to social justice, has not done its part fully. And sometimes it feels like it hasn't done its part at all. What can you tell me as a member of the black community about what you know of social injustice and what life has been like to look at history and look at over 400 years of the color of your skin dictating what people think of you, how they feel about you, whether or not they give you a job, whether or not they feel your life is worthy? It completely boggles my mind to be in a world that can't see that different colors of the crayon, different colors in a crayon box still make a great picture. But it's 2020. And 401 years ago, it was too much, and it's too much now. What's your take on social justice and the fact that the black community has consistently been treated in a way that I don't even know if there's a word for?
And Dan, you mentioned it. It's been from the beginning of history, with American history, and even prior to that. However, something I'd like to say first is the reason why I believe we're in the greatest country is you see the progression that we've made over time. 1920, we passed to make it legal for women to vote. 1964, 1965, we had the civil rights laws put into place. Recently, we had LGBT laws and protections put into place. So I say all that in the fact that even though right now we're not where we want to be, just looking at American history, I know in the future it's going to be better. And people like yourself that are educated on history and aware of the injustice in society that we currently see is going to make it better for future generations.
Well, and I appreciate that comment. For me, I feel like in my platform and in my opportunity, if I stayed quiet, my job is to speak for a living. And I think two things about that. If I stayed quiet and said, no, we're just going to talk about sports, we're just going to kind of glaze over everything else that's going on, and we're just going to focus on sports, I can't do that. To me, it's like walking by an alleyway and seeing somebody get attacked and then just walk away and go, well, I'm happy it's not me, I'm happy it's not my mom, I'm happy it's not my kid. I can't do that. And so I feel like I have to speak, and not that I have to speak, but I feel like I was going to speak anyways. And anybody that's been on the show, Kroom, who's listening this morning, he could tell you that the conversations that I've had, were open to these doors way before George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so on and so forth. And then on top of all of that, I think the second thing is, though I speak for a living and I have a microphone, I have really tried to focus in on the notion of you listen to hear as opposed to listening to respond. And what I mean by that is some people just listen to the end. They listen to you speak so that they can hear you finish and go, oh, great, it's my turn. As opposed to listening, hearing you. And they said something as simple as like somebody talks, and then when they're done, you just take a deep breath, and that space between them talking, your breath, and when you speak again, the space that breath takes essentially establishes some respect for that person. And honestly, they said calms down conversations because it makes people feel like they've been listened to. So Marcus, what I've learned in all of this is I can't stay quiet because I won't. I care about every life on this planet and beyond, every life that was and every life that is to be. So that's number one. And number two, if you want to learn from the black community, you talk to the black community. And I feel that, I've been so graced by a very open arm welcome from the black community. And I never saw it like that because I just see people as individuals. But now bringing people on the show that have never been on, like yourself, or people that, have been on for a while with me and have gotten to know me over the years, I think that it's a great opportunity for me to kind of just sit back from the microphone and go, tell me what it feels like, Marcus, because you know better than anybody. So what does it feel like? What's it like being a black man in the community? What was life like growing up? How did you handle it?
Well, I mean, for me, I had a unique experience, however, not that different to many young African-American males in America. And that's why I told you earlier that J. Cole, Forest Hill Drive is one of my favorite albums because he speaks on challenges that a lot of African-American youth in the inner city go through, whether it's growing up in a single mother household, which I did, growing up in an area that was stricken with poverty and crime, which I did, which I was from Camden, New Jersey. And being an African-American in America, it has, like we mentioned it earlier, it has some tough history around it. But I'm a really positive person. Even though I faced experiences where my race might have made the situation a little bit bad, for lack of words, or it made it harder for me to achieve something, I also go back to, I'm in America, and I have some of the greatest opportunities at my fingertips. I have the ability to go to college and get educated, something my ancestors didn't have. I have the ability to vote, which my ancestors didn't have. So once again, it just goes to, even though there's police brutality, there's things going bad in healthcare for African Americans as COVID exposed that. We have an overpopulation in our prison system based on the percentage of African Americans in America. However, once again, we have progressed so much in a short period of time. 400 years for a country is not that long. So I have faith that when I'm 80 years old, God willing, I'm going to see police brutality, police reform. I'm going to see prison reform. I'm going to see resources entered into the healthcare industry to help out African Americans. And I mean, I'm just a positive person, Dan.
And I'm happy that you are, Marcus. I really am. And I think that one of the things that isn't said enough is that in the media is going to, and I always tell people I'm media by definition of what's on my badge, but by human being and how I treat people, I'm the farthest thing from it. I'm media because that's what they classify you as on your credential, but as far as telling the truth, I say I'm a 0.1%er. 0.1% of the media tells the truth. 0.1% cares about the person and not the story. And, I think the media would love to say, I think there's a lot of people in the media would love to see the world burn. Would love to see, black people just get used, right? Not give the rights that you're seeking and whatnot because it makes for good TV. And the sickening, belief that, and the reality that there are people in the media that think of life as a movie as opposed to actual lives being affected. I don't see it that way. I see it as, the names that are there, the Marcus Colemans, the Eric Crooms, the Shamarko Thomases, the, Prince Tyson Gullys, the Jerome Smiths, and on and on and on and on and on. I see the men, I see the women that are trying to just live a great life. And you said you're positive, and I love that. And I feel like in today's world, it's not stated enough that the majority of the black community, and that's what I was getting at with the media, in my opinion, the majority of the black community, since I've had the blessing and the privilege to be around the black community and meet so many tremendously amazing people, I don't think we really put in the spotlight, Marcus, that there is a lot of positivity and there's a lot of peacefulness. They want to talk about, well, looting this and rioting this and doing that. That's a select group that I feel like is opportunistic of the fact that there's civil unrest right now. That's not the message of the peaceful protest. That's not the message, in my opinion, of Black Lives Matter. And so for you, Marcus, what can you say to that piece of it? That the majority of the black community, in my opinion, is not lethal, is not going out there to hurt people. And you've handled slavery and you've handled 400 plus years in the black community better than I would anticipate anybody could. And what I mean by that is most people are like yourself, just trying to find a positive way to create change. It's instead of being violent, instead of being hateful, instead of doing an eye for an eye. Where does that come from? Where does the ability to essentially calm the Hulk, where does that come from?
Well, for me, I can't speak for all African Americans, but for me, that positivity and love comes from my religious beliefs. I grew up, my grandfather and grandmother were Southern Baptists. My grandfather was a pastor for 20 plus years in Camden, New Jersey, and I was always raised to love in spite of hate. And just following some of the greats in the African American community, like Martin Luther King, he was a peaceful protester. And without Martin Luther King, we wouldn't have the 1964-1965 Civil Rights Act. And another point, you mentioned this earlier, the role the press has in the narrative and what people see. And there's a term, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this, the fifth estate. I think with technology this time around, we're using social media to control the narrative. Yeah. It's more so a grassroots movement, and it has been making a tremendous impact. Even if it's small gestures of hitting up black squares on Facebook and Instagram to show solidarity to the cause and fight against social injustice, it also allows people like myself, my friends, athletes that have big platforms like LeBron James to post things up about African American history and to provide insight to people that potentially have never heard of things like the GI Bill. African Americans after the war didn't have the ability to get the same mortgage loans as their white counterparts. And there's so many different systemic things that cause African Americans to be in a low social economic base in America. So I think that being positive, like I mentioned earlier, makes a lot of changes in society. Being peaceful, that's what majority of the protests are. I really believe in the next few years you're going to see major reforms to police, among other structures in America.
That coming here from Marcus Coleman this morning, Syracuse Football defensive tackle, alum on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And, I think that's important, Marcus, because, some people that don't know the history, or maybe don't want to pay attention to it, or maybe they just listen to what they're told. You hear that notion of, well, if they want to get themselves out of the poverty that they're in, then they shouldn't have put themselves there in the first place. The black community didn't. You know what I mean? And I think that what started so many years ago has kind of trickled down, and obviously each individual family is going to act a certain way, and some people do the right things and some people don't, and some people work to get out of stuff and some people stay in that. But I think it's important to know something you just mentioned, that's, the black community was essentially, at times in our history, thrust into a bad situation or a tougher way of getting to where their white counterparts were going to be. And I think it's important to know that when you're pushed to be in poverty, when you're pushed to be in, not the safest or greatest of neighborhoods, that does something with history. And I think that it's so important that you bring up, different statements like you've made, because it gives us an opportunity to understand, instead of just saying, oh, well, if you're in that situation, you put yourself in it. Not necessarily. and I think that that's important to say.
I totally agree with that, Dan. And having understanding of history allows you, in my opinion, to have empathy. And I really love history, so it allows me to relate to a lot of different people, because in America we're blessed to have such a diverse population, whether it's by ethnicity, religion, country of origin, regional. And it's just so awesome that when you learn about someone else's culture, you can be aware of their differences, respect their differences, and realize that you have a lot more in common than on the surface, whether it's the color of their skin or how they speak, how they walk. You might both love Syracuse sports like you and I did. It's amazing if you just speak to people how much you realize you have in common.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. Just like I said, all the colors in the crayon box, they all color the same way. They just come out different colors, but you need them to make a great picture. So a lot of great stuff coming out here, and definitely appreciate having Marcus here on the show. Marcus, before I let you go, we're going to do rapid fire. You're going to put me on the hot seat in a second here, but it's time to get into sports and look at that side of it in the sense of college football and what the hopes are. Where is your thoughts on this? I mean, there's things that are coming up today. Two very, very high-profile players in the sports world talk about, the fact that the ACC, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, the SEC, and the Big 12, the quote-unquote Power Five, the legislative moniker, the legal term, which is the Autonomous Five. We've seen Justin Fields, quarterback of Ohio State, and the quarterback of Clemson, Trevor Lawrence, both put this out. Hashtag We Are United, hashtag We Want to Play. They have all 5 logos of the ACC, Big Ten, Pac-12, SEC, and Big 12, and it says, "We all want to play football this season. Establish universal mandated health and safety procedures and protocols to protect college athletes against COVID-19 among all conferences throughout the NCAA. Give players the opportunity to opt out and respect their decision. Guarantee eligibility whether a player chooses to play the season or not. Use our voices to establish open communication and trust between players and officials. Ultimately create a college football players association, representative of the players of all Power 5 conferences." What are your thoughts on this? The players are not leaving it in the hands of the ADs, in the hands of the presidents and the chancellors, in the hands of the conferences and the commissioners. They're saying, and again, high-profile players like you were talking about with LeBron James saying different things about social justice. Well, the players are taking this into their hands and saying, we want to play. Everybody's talking about our safety, but we're telling you right now, we want to play. And Trevor Lawrence had made a comment, if you send us home, then we're going to be in worse condition than if we were on campus, because if you send us home, then we're not all going to be abiding by the same protocol. We're not all going to be in the same situation. We're not going to get tested all the time, and so on and so forth. So, what is your take on this, and what are your thoughts on these high profile athletes saying, listen, you all are talking about us and how you're worried about us, and we might not play football because of your fear of our safety, where we're flipping back and saying, just put great things in place because we want to play. The players are now speaking out that they want to be on the field. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so COVID right now is so controversial and political. And you can see, for my job personally, we're still work from home just due to the risk of just one person getting sick. But when it comes to sports, if you look at the NBA, they have great protocols in play. They're in the bubble. You haven't had that many cases. But then if you look at Major League Baseball, it's a complete disaster there. You have some teams where 17-plus players have COVID. So, and like the players mentioned, they should have the choice. Depending on their belief, maybe they have a weakened immune system, they might have sickle cells, they might have diabetes.
Yeah.
They want to make a decision not to play this year. We should respect it due to the risk of COVID. Now, you still have players that want to play, they love the game. This might be their senior year, the last opportunity they can show their skills to the NFL. Let's NBA was able to do it. I have faith that the NCAA, which is a multi-billion-dollar organization, they can put the safety protocols into place to keep our athletes safe.
Yeah, and I think that's what it comes down to is, these athletes want to be on the field. They don't want to miss an opportunity. In the case of Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields coming out and saying what they're saying, it makes perfect sense, and that's because this is more than likely their last season. I mean, this is their showcase for them to go into the draft, and so, they want to get this done, and they want to be out there because the only thing that is the present. You don't know what the future is going to hold. We learned that more than ever with coronavirus if people didn't know that before. So, they're coming out and saying, listen, don't sideline us. Let us play. But figure out a way that's going to do it. And what do you think about the college football players standing united and saying, we want to essentially create a college football players association? What do you think about that?
So college football has came a long way just in 60 years. Recently, I think it was 2 years ago, where the NCAA ruled that they were going to allow athletes to make money off their likeness. And as you bring money into amateur sports, I don't know if they're going to have to change that term around. I'm not an expert on it. I don't have a law degree. But right now, they're still considered amateurs. I think if they start making substantial amount of money, they have like Trevor Lawrence potentially can make $1.2 million this year off his likeness. I think you're going to need some type of organization, and you might want to have to reconsider, do you call these players amateurs? And that goes into a whole nother situation. I think we're moving in the right direction, but that decision 2 years ago to allow athletes to make money off their likeness, I love it, but the complexities that comes next, I think, is immense.
Yeah, name, image, and likeness, and there's a lot of questions, and we've talked about it on the show here, and I mean, those conversations can go on and on forever and a day to try and figure out what makes sense and how do we do it, and, how do you, I mean, there's Marcus, I'm going to have to bring you back on the show to break down, I call it the multi-layered lasagna, and as much as it may taste good at the end of it, it is really hard to make. So that would be my best way to describe it. With that being said, I am going to give you the microphone, Marcus, as Marcus Coleman is here with us on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. You have 4 questions. I have no idea what they are. All I did was tell you to come up with some questions. I don't know how I feel about the fact that when I called you this morning, you said, oh, I got them. So I know you spent some time on it. I don't know what that means, but I am now on the hot seat. Marcus is now taking the microphone. He's directing the show here. So I will be interviewed, essentially, right now. Marcus, you have 4 questions to ask me. Ask away.
First question, I'll keep it nice and easy. Who's your who's the best quarterback in Syracuse history, in your opinion, and why?
Who is the best quarterback in Syracuse history and why? This is tough. So I have met and interviewed Donovan McNabb and Don McPherson and, Todd Philcox. I've gotten to talk to, a bunch of quarterbacks in the history, Marvin Graves of Syracuse. I would say the best one, in my opinion, and it's tough, but I would have to say with his NFL career and everything that he was able to do and leading a team and getting them to a Super Bowl and consistently winning conference championships and winning the division and just an awesome story that I had when I got to meet him, and he whispered in my ear, in my mom's ear, I know I'm not anybody right now, but just watch, I might be somebody someday, is Donovan McNabb. And I actually, Marcus, I know I want you to go back and watch this video at some point because I'm going to show something. So what I have here on the video, for those of you that are watching, those of you who are listening on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt, make sure you go to Facebook Live, facebook.com/live now DT. I have my Donovan McNabb signed coaster from Tully's, and he was working there as a host. My mom spotted him, then I spotted him. My mom goes, I think that's Donovan. And he was just kind of like early in his playing career. I don't even know if he was the starting quarterback yet. And so my mom said, I think that's Donovan. And I was like, me too. And my dad's like, you're both nuts. There's no way that that's Donovan McNabb. Why would he be working here at Tully's and this and that? We go up at the end. I was little. My mom asked him and said, are you Donovan McNabb? And he said, yes, I am. And he kind of put his finger over his mouth like, shh, don't tell anybody. And then, they went and grabbed a coaster, and he signed the coaster, and it's one of my most prized mementos, I would say, and it's here in my studio. And he signed it number 5 quarterback, and I remember being upset because he played basketball, and I think he was number 25. And I grew up and I played basketball, so I wanted the basketball autograph. Little did I know what this was going to mean. And he did. He looked at my mom and I before we left, after he signed that, and he said, I know I'm not anything right now, but just watch. I might be somebody someday. And, then he went on to become the number 2 pick in the draft. And so I think it's an incredible story. And I think it was an incredible moment. I know my mom's favorite is Donovan, but I would have to say, watching him from college to pros, I'd have to say the best Syracuse quarterback of all time is the man who signed a coaster for me a long time ago, Donovan McNabb.
Well, Dan, I would say you made a great choice. As you know, I grew up in South Jersey. I'm a die-hard Philadelphia Eagles fan, as is Linda. And Donovan McNabb is my favorite Syracuse football player, hands down. And I still have a lot of animosity to the New England Patriots, even though I live in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
They took that Super Bowl away from them.
Listen, man, they took a couple of years ago, because I cover the Jaguars, and that's my favorite team. And I've covered the Jaguars for, on-site, on location in some respect for the better part of over a decade. And I went with them in their last playoff run a few seasons ago, and I went all the way to Foxborough, and 4 points of separation is what prevented not only Jacksonville, but potentially and probably me from being at the Super Bowl. So I know all about the Patriots spoiling a good time. I get it. I understand it. And anytime you want to watch the Patriots play anybody and, have some fun with that and have some comedy, listen, Marcus, watch a Patriots game with me. And if you want to laugh, that'll be a perfect time for you. Listen, I respect them all. I have fun. But there's something to be said about watching my Jaguars when they play the Patriots. I'll tell you that much.
I love it. So look, the Eagles got them back with a backup quarterback, Nick Foles, coming in big, getting us our first Super Bowl.
And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What's question number 2?
Question number 2. Across any sport at Syracuse, so football, basketball, soccer, volleyball, what is the greatest sports moment in Syracuse history, in your opinion?
Greatest moment in Syracuse sports history, in my opinion. Well, obviously, there's a lot of great things that have happened with lacrosse. I would say, there's obviously some football moments, the championship in '59. But I would have to say the greatest moment that I lived was a moment that I still don't believe actually happened. And I predicted them to win. I was one of 2 people in my class. I was a senior at Christian Brothers Academy the year that Syracuse Orange men's basketball won the national championship, and I was laughed at for 6 weeks. I had people think I'm crazy, I'm a homer, constantly making fun of me. And then we woke up and Syracuse had won the national championship, and those same people were slapping high fives and yelling and screaming and having a great time. And I walked up and I said, I'm sorry. What are you all celebrating? Did you get like an extra pudding cup in the cafeteria today? Did you get some more recess or something? Did mom actually, did she pack you a slice of pizza instead of a tuna sandwich? Like, I don't know what you're excited about, because me and there was one other kid, I'm like, me and this idiot were the only 2 dumb people that thought Syracuse could do it. I mean, that's what you called us, right? We were stupid, we were ridiculous, we're stuff I can't say on the air. And so, you know what I mean? So I was like, I'm not high-fiving anybody. And the fact that some of these, some of the kids, they didn't want to high-five me, and I was like, I'm sorry, let me check. And I pulled out, because I had people fill out brackets. I pulled out the brackets. I'm like, well, you picked Duke, you picked Ohio State, you picked Kentucky, you picked this, you picked that. I was like, y'all need to consult your conscience, because if anybody needs to enjoy this moment, that would be me. And so I would say the greatest sports moment was back in 2003, and I said I would shave my head if they won, and I shaved it really low. And for those of you that watch on video, my hair is shaved to like the lowest it can be before shaving it all off. So I've kind of stayed true since 2003, and much respect to Syracuse and the amazing players that comprise that, and so many of them have been on the show, from Josh Pace to Carmelo Anthony. I got to talk to at Syracuse to Jerry, who I talk to all the time, and obviously Hakeem Warwick, who got to come here recently. So a lot of great stuff, but I don't know why people were slapping hands in this and that, because that seems a little ridiculous when my bracket was the only one that actually, mine and the other kid, that actually said Syracuse. But that was a great moment for me, Marcus.
You're a true believer. We gotta get Boeheim another championship before he retires.
Yeah, man, we might have to get Boeheim to ad lib a little bit and expand the horizon, and I don't think that that's ever going to happen. So we'll have to see. What's your third one?
All right, my third one is a little bit more personal. What motivated or inspired you to become a sports broadcaster?
What motivated me to become a broadcaster? I love connecting people. I love making the world a smaller place. I love the thought that I can literally, and maybe already have in a lot of ways, created 6 degrees of separation with people all over the world. And so I think that I love telling stories. I love connecting people. I believe that I can stand in front of 1 million people with a microphone and make a difference. So I knew I had to start somewhere, and it'll be 18 years this November. I have now broadcasted longer than I haven't in my lifetime. So when I turn 35, I'll be heading into 18 years of broadcasting. So, I fell in love with it, and I've been a storyteller since I was 5 years old on my dad's word processor, and I just never stopped.
Wow. And congratulations on 18 years. You have a great show here, and you always did a great job covering Syracuse sports.
Thank you.
And my last question is, where do you see the Dan Tortora show in 5 years?
Where do I see this at? Well, Dan Tortora Broadcast Media, it has Wake Up Call, it has Superpowered Pop for entertainment, it has Dan on Disney for Disney and advice and helping to plan trips. Free Talks just got started with Amani Free, who's one of the greatest people that I could co-host anything with, and so, which is his and her perspective on relationships. There's some other things in the pipeline. There's stand-up comedy that kind of it filters its way into here, but I've been working on that for real. Acting, which I want to get back into, directing, screenwriting. I'm working on some music. So where do I want to see my company in 5 years? I just want to see me having fun. I just want to see me doing my thing. I've been thinking about stand-up comedy for a long time. There's a lot of stuff I've been wanting to do. I got a feeling, and I trust God and where God pulls me. I asked him a question. He gave me a bunch of answers to a bunch of questions in like a day. So yeah, I would just say stay tuned, Marcus. You might be seeing me. You'll be seeing me at some point on the big screen. I hope you come out to one of my comedy shows. I hope you sit in the front. It's gonna get real, and it's gonna be fun. And all I ask is that my ex-girlfriends all sit in the front row, because this is a special one for them.
I understand that one. I understand that. Well, Dan, once again, you have a great show, and I didn't know you had so many other business lines under that umbrella. I'm a praying man, so I'll have you in my prayers that your 5 years goal comes true, that you're still having fun in 5 years from now. And thank you again for having me on. It was an awesome way to start off on Monday.
Well, I appreciate it, Marcus. And this will be the first of hopefully having you on here many times. I love the fact that we got to do it. You never know if people are paying attention when I'm trying to do my job and do it differently and whatnot. And the media is such a cold and dingy place in a lot of ways. So I'm very happy to know that you witnessed something when you were playing and witnessed something now that's positive. It means that the message I'm trying to send is getting through. So thank you for reminding me a lot of things this morning, all positives, and I cannot thank you enough for giving me that moment today to start off my week, and I definitely look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Sounds good. And last thing, if you're listening and you're looking for some mentoring or coaching, or you're an athlete that wants to get some interviewing skills, check out the Dooley Leadership Experience website. It's the DLE.Dooley.com.
That coming from Marcus Coleman. Make sure you check that out. Marcus, be safe, stay blessed, and I'll look forward to talking with you soon, okay?
You too, Dan.
All right, take care.
Hello.